up and sit down.
Hello, Champagne Dreamers, and welcome to the very first episode of Season 2 of JANESSA After Dark. Now, of course, when you don't have anything resembling a regular production schedule, a season is basically however the fuck long I want it to be, and I decided that a year was long enough. So we are officially entering Season 2 of JANESSA After Dark. And I am super excited for some of the plans that I have in store for you. So I've been thinking a lot about my quote-unquote brand. I know I sound like an asshole just saying it, but I've really been trying to refine the different focuses that I want all of the content that I create to follow. And as I was looking at all of the different things that I do, the shows, event hosting, Miss J's Friday Night Frights, my website with the blog and the makeup forum and theater reviews, as well as these podcasts, I really came down to three central pillars to the things that I love and that really get me excited to create content. And those three pillars are glam, geek, and gore. Now, the glam stuff obviously includes all of the makeup reviews in the makeup forum. It includes my drag show performances, my Fit for a Queen jewelry designs, but I also love the side of glamour that's about excess. In fact, our first episode of Season 1, I would consider part of the glam pillar, where I interviewed porn star Chris Harder. I'm really fascinated by the world of burlesque and pornography because I think that they represent a sort of excess that we don't always see in our mainstream culture. Or at least not in the same way. I think that if you really break it down, all of the media produced by the Kardashians has a sort of masturbatory aesthetic to it that is very similar to pornography, but that's a whole other podcast waiting to happen. Now, geek includes things like my love of comic books and superhero movies, all of the kind of pop culture surrounding those things, but also it relates to the fact that I'm a bit of a nerd. I have an academic background that includes a master's degree in English, studying things like queer theory, gender studies, and performance theory. That's why when some of you are trying to just enjoy a piece of pop culture and not wanting to look that deep, you get a little frustrated with me when I like to pick and dig through all of the layers to try to figure out what it really means. I promise you, there is no piece of media or culture that an English major can't ruin given enough time. I love to do that kind of gender analysis and talk about queer theory and have that be part of the geeky goodness that I build into all of the content that I create. And now this podcast is always going to have a little bit of all three. There's always going to be a little bit of glam, a little bit of geek. But for Season 2, we are definitely hitting it hard on the gore pillar. And of course, the gore pillar is all about my love of horror films, including and especially the weird, twisted portrayals of gender and sexuality that happen in a lot of those movies. I know the geek is kind of sneaking in there. I love horror and I love talking about horror, and that's what we're going to be doing for the first few episodes of Season 2 of JANESSA After Dark. For this particular episode, I've got a really fun interview with an independent filmmaker. She is a queer-identified woman that we have included in a previous Miss J's Friday Night Frights that was part of a Grand Forks Pride celebration, and she loves making twisted, bizarre, interesting content that makes you think. But before we get to her, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of representation in culture in general, but especially in horror cinema. Now, growing up, I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like there was some rule book or some set of guidelines that everybody else seemed to have that I never got my copy of. I didn't always know how to interpret social situations, and I certainly didn't understand a lot of gendered social situations. And even though it was frustrating, and even though I tried really hard to fit in, I also had this sneaking suspicion that maybe I wasn't the problem. When I discovered horror movies, I loved the cheesy, over-the-top acting, the gore effects, the jump scares, all of that. But there was also something about my outsider feeling that I recognized in the movies. Those films often presented a group of people who were under some sort of threat, and nobody believed them. Nobody believed that this was happening. Authority figures were useless to stop it. And part of the terror and the panic of so many of those movies is people wondering, what if it's just me? What if it's all in my head? That really spoke to me and how I was feeling growing up in small town North Dakota. Now, a lot of times the assumed audience for horror films is young, straight white men. And don't get me wrong, this is not an opportunity to go in and bash straight white men and say that straight white men are the root of all of our problems. That's not what this commentary is about. But I think that that assumption comes from the fact that we sort of assume that that's the audience for most of the media that's produced in our culture today. And I'm not saying that straight white men in specific situations can't feel like outsiders, can't feel like they are outside of some societal norm that is keeping them excluded. I don't have that experience. I don't walk that path. That's not my journey. And so I recognize that they absolutely can have that kind of experience as well. However, if you think about how our society is set up and who benefits the most and who benefits the least on a macro level, the outsider status is most often going to be occupied by people who are the opposite of all of those things. People who are not white, people who are not straight, and people who are not male. Now, what happens for a lot of us outsiders is that we have to go through a certain type of process of translation. Because we so rarely see people like ourselves represented in these movies, or if we do see them represented, they're as side characters, they often don't last long. We have to find ways to translate our own perspectives and thoughts and ideas into the main characters. And those times that we do see people like us represented and they're killed off, that's something that we notice, that's something that we see. And it's something that's reflective of the larger culture. There are certain types of people who are more likely to be victims of violence, victims of crime, victims of assault. And so we recognize that having people like us be the victims earlier and more often is representative of a lot of the struggles that queer folks and people of color already face in the real world. Now, in order to start changing the narrative, that's why representation is so important. And to illustrate that, I'm going to jump out of the horror genre for a moment and talk a little bit about the show Ellen. Now, I'm an old school queer, so I actually remember Ellen's show and when she came out in 1997. I was a freshman in college and I had just been going through my own coming out process. And that show, for all of its faults, really was revolutionary. It was the first time that a main character on a network television show was openly gay or lesbian. And that matters because up until that point, gay men and lesbians, and certainly there wasn't much representation of bisexuals or transgendered people or pansexual people or non-binary people, any of those other kinds of identities, but even just gay or lesbian people, the representations that were there were as side characters, as people who usually brought some sort of message or some sort of learning for the main character. We very rarely got to have our own stories. We were very rarely represented as having families and relationships and full lives. Now, The Ellen Show didn't last too much longer after that coming out episode, and part of the reason is because it really sort of became super gay. There's a theory of lesbian and gay identity development that says that people who are coming out go through several stages. And one of those stages, stage 5, is where people are so proud of their new identity, they're so caught up in it, that they want everything to be gay. They want gay friends and gay clothing and gay culture and gay music and gay movies. And they're so excited that sometimes they're a little bit annoying. And that's kind of what happened to The Ellen Show after her coming out episode. Every new episode revolved around Ellen exploring some new facet of her lesbian identity. And while that was great to see for someone like me who was an emerging queer from small town North Dakota, it was really fascinating to see that portrayed on TV. We got to see all of the gay elements of Ellen's life, but we didn't get to see her life as a whole. We didn't get to see her as a whole person. Even Chaz Bono, who at the time was still presenting as Chastity Bono, said that The Ellen Show was just too gay. But it was a step forward. It was a type of representation that we hadn't seen before. And it let people know that you really could put a gay or lesbian or queer character at the center of that type of media product. And even if it wasn't perfect, it was still important. The identity model that I referenced earlier is Cass's model of homosexual identity formation, published in 1979. And stage 5 is the stage of identity pride. And even though that stage can go a little bit over the top, it can become a little bit too much, it's important as a developmental step to get to stage 6. Stage 6 is identity synthesis. And what that means is that the person who is dealing with this identity change has finally found a way to synthesize their queer identity with all of the other parts of their identity, and they become a whole person. That sort of synthesis is important for the representation of queer people in culture as well. That's why it's so important for us to see more women and people of color and queer folks in the movies and shows that we consume. And how do we do that? We get more women and people of color and queer folks who are making movies and TV shows. As the diversity of the creators expands, the diversity of portrayals will expand. And that's why I think that independent cinema, and especially independent horror cinema, are so important. Because even though it can be a struggle to find the resources and the finances, when you do things yourself outside of this large studio system where you aren't beholden to a bunch of money-conscious producers, you can create representations and content that are much more diverse and representative of the types of people in the real world. In her book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws, Carol Clover wrote about the final girls of slasher films. But think about how transformative it could be for someone to see a black man or a non-binary queer person be that final girl, be that person who survives and defeats the threat to the community. Because those people are often themselves seen as the threat to the community. And so that can be a really empowering message. It can be a different way to present that sort of story in a way that has meaning for real people's lives. Now, I can already feel the fanboys starting to percolate a little bit of rage. So let me just say that this is not about erasing straight white men. It's not about saying that only certain perspectives have value. It's about saying that all perspectives have value. And up to this point, only certain perspectives have ever been seen on the screen. Certain perspectives get represented over and over and over again. And so when something doesn't fit that mold, it becomes suspect. It becomes something to be attacked. And so many times when things are made through the larger studio systems, they're always looking for a way to placate those same perspectives. I was listening to an interview recently on NPR with the creators of the new movie Crazy Rich Asians. Now, this is the first film in 25 years since 1993's The Joy Luck Club to feature a predominantly Asian cast. 25 years, and yet the creators spoke about having to fight for the case of having the main character be an Asian American woman. The studios felt that a white woman might be a better representation of that fish out of water story in traveling with her fiancé to Singapore. And the creators had to really sort of make the case that being Asian American is enough of a difference from people who grew up in Asia to justify that tension and that conflict. And I think that a lot of what the studio was trying to get at is they just wanted to have a white woman, and probably a recognizable named star white woman, in the lead in that film to help bring in a wider audience, i.e., white people. There's this idea that if you create art, if you create movies and TV shows and other kinds of art from a non-white perspective or a non-heterosexual perspective or a non-male perspective, that you're only going to be able to draw in that community. And I call bullshit. Men can absolutely watch and absorb and learn from and connect with and engage with the stories of women. Non-queer folks can absolutely engage with the stories of queer folks. And people of all different races and ethnicities can connect with the stories of people of color whose racial or ethnic identity is not the same as their own. And how do I know that, you ask? Because of that translation that I talked about earlier. When you don't see representations of yourself in the media, you learn to translate. Now, just because you're used to seeing yourself represented on screen more often doesn't mean that you can't do this process of translation. It just means that most of the time you haven't been asked to. And that's why when some piece of media, especially one that people have a deep love and appreciation for, or there's a strong fandom for, takes on a different perspective than what people are used to, the fan reaction can be pretty extreme. Think about the new Star Wars movies. How many butthurt fanboys lost their damn minds when the new Star Wars trailer was released, and it quickly became clear that the two primary characters in this new film were a woman and a black man. But if you were a fan of the franchise, you had to make a decision. Either this was going to be enough to cancel your love of this thing that you claim to be deeply engaged with and invested in, or you were going to have to watch it with the idea that you would have to translate your perspective onto these new characters. And while asking straight white men to do that sort of translation isn't super common, it's also not unheard of. Think about the deep and abiding fandom of the Lara Croft Tomb Raider series. Men have been playing that series of video games for years. And yes, I know there are some who are going to say it's all about the big pixelated boobs, but trust me, there's enough free and available pornography on the internet that the number of dudes playing Tomb Raider just to get some pixelated boobs into their personal spank bank is pretty low. Most of them are playing it because they enjoy the story. They enjoy being part of that adventure. And in order to do that, they have to have some level of identification with Lara Croft. She's the protagonist, she is the character that they are controlling, and there's going to be some level of identification there. What's most important about creating these kinds of characters, whether they're women or queer folks or people of color, is that the representations have to be of whole, dynamic, interesting, complex people. It's all about that identity synthesis. The more somebody is caught up in the specific nuances of an identity and talking about and exploring that identity, the more you're going to create a character that appeals more specifically to just that community. And as an aside, I don't think that that is necessarily a bad thing. I think that we need some of those stage 5 portrayals, whether that's for queer folks or people of color. We need people who are exploring those identities, and even when they do that, I don't think that that translation is impossible. But if that identity is part of who they are as a whole person, and so it's not ignored, but it's also not the only focus of all of their exploration and growth throughout the film or the show, then that's going to be a character that other people can translate to. And that's why I think independent film and independent horror film in particular is very important and very powerful as a tool to create these new sort of representations. Despite all of the challenges, despite all of the hardships that can happen in having to put together your art yourself, you have so much more freedom in how you can present your perspective and your interpretation of the world. And so while I think it's still important to be pushing the Hollywood studios to be presenting better and more diverse and more interesting movies, don't forget to support independent producers as well. Don't be afraid to dig around into those less traveled areas to find films that have really interesting, really unique perspectives and portrayals, and don't be afraid to support them. Some independent creators do most of their fundraising through GoFundMe or Kickstarter or Indiegogo, but you can also seek out independent producers and creators through social media like Instagram and Facebook. If you can't contribute financially to their campaigns, see if there's some other skill that you have that might be of assistance. Maybe they have a set that they would love to have built on the cheap and you have some carpentry skills. Maybe you have an English major background and you can help with script edits. Or maybe you can just be a cheerleader from the sidelines who helps share their page and spread the message of their film. Whatever level of support you can provide, I promise you in the independent world, it's much more noticed and appreciated than when you share the latest trailer for the big Hollywood blockbuster. Or maybe you're looking to become a creator yourself. Maybe you feel like you have a perspective you want to share with the world, but you're not sure how to get started. Don't be afraid to reach out to other independent creators, producers, directors, and actors. You'd be surprised how welcoming and supportive that community can be. Sure, there may be some people out there that are not as interested in helping newcomers, and so don't be discouraged if you don't get the exact reaction you were looking for the first time you reach out. But most people who are involved in independent content creation understand the struggle. They understand that there are fewer resources out there, and so they're usually more willing to be resources to each other. And if you do become a creator, remember all those people that helped you get there, and when people come looking to you for assistance, don't forget to pay it forward. Independent content creation can be difficult, it can be challenging, it can be expensive, but it can also be one of the most rewarding things that you ever do. It's a perfect opportunity to reach out into a community of people who have similar interests and collaborate and share ideas. And all of that sharing and collaboration is going to lead to better representation. And however you decide to be involved in that process, whether it's as a creator or a consumer, let's make sure that we're all always pushing towards better, more dynamic, more interesting, and fully realized representations of different communities, identities, and perspectives in the media that we watch. When you finally see yourself or people like you represented in the media that you watch, it can be a really wonderful and empowering feeling. And we want to make sure that no community gets lost in translation. All right, well, I am so excited to introduce to you my guest for this episode. When I first saw her film, Dolly Deadly, I knew that I wanted to show it at one of my late night movie events. The film tells the story of a young boy named Benji who likes playing with dolls, he likes his tap shoes, and the neighborhood kids just won't leave him alone. There was certainly a lot of this story that I resonated with, and just like Stephen King's brilliant masterpiece Carrie, I knew that I was in for a crazy revenge flick. But as the film progressed, I was surprised by the really beautiful and surreal imagery that I was being presented by this director. The movie was gory and campy and fun and all of the things I look for in independent cinema, but it was also visually stunning. And I knew that this was a director who had something to say. In addition to Dolly Deadly, her first full-length feature film, she's also worked on several shorts, including the film Boyfriend, and also recently released the horror documentary More Blood. She's also the director of the Medusa Underground Film Festival in Las Vegas, Nevada, and through her production company Wretched Productions, working in association with Troma Pictures, she's finishing up production on the sequel to Dolly Deadly, Kill Dolly Kill, a bloody and fabulous rock musical. Please enjoy my interview with independent filmmaker Heidi Moore. The first thing I just want to ask you about was that first film that I came in contact with, Dolly Deadly, and that was your first full-length feature, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about that, because I really was interested in the style of that movie. There's these kind of really strange dream sequences, and it's very color-saturated. I mean, there's even moments in the film that I think are very similar to Dario Argento's Suspiria with the way that you use color and stuff. If you want to tell me a little bit more about just Dolly Deadly and how that film kind of came together and your inspirations.
Okay, there's so much to say about that. So I guess how it started is I found this weird doll at the thrift store, and then I started, thinking I wanted to make a movie based around this doll. And I started, coming up with ideas. And then I met Cassandra Seckler. I don't know if you know Cassandra. She is one of the owners of Dreams for Dead Cats. You would probably like her work. You should check her out. But I was such a fan of her work because she makes experimental, really strange, interesting movies. And we decided to kind of team up on Dolly Deadly. She wrote a lot of the dreams. Of course, I filmed and directed, so I started changing everything in the script. But originally, Cassandra, wrote the dreams.
Yeah.
She came over to my house. We made a concept teaser. Man, that's buried in YouTube somewhere. I'll send it to you. And then from there, we kind of wrote a script, and then life started happening. So the script was getting kind of expensive and things. So I went through and I completely revamped the script to make it really more doable. And then I started changing things. Instead of it being more about the doll, I wanted it more about the boy. Because I started thinking a lot about a lot of my friends, things that have happened to me. things that happen to people where it's like the people who are supposed to be protecting you are your worst bullies a lot of times. I was thinking of another time when I bought my son a pair of tap shoes at the thrift store, and he's really excited to have them. And he wore them to the park, and then he came home and was sad and took them off. And it's because a dad was making fun of him for wearing girls' shoes. And it just made me sad because I was like, what? Like, who the fuck is this? As a parent, why would a parent be making fun of a kid at the park?
Yeah, I mean, that's kids are bad enough on their own, but
right, exactly. So, and then the dad's showing his kid to do that. And so I started thinking about when I was growing up, you know, and my mom, oh, don't hold your hand like that. This is what the fags do. Or, oh, you're screaming like a little girl, or, you know, all those kind of things. And then I just started thinking of kind of like the worst case scenario, but also things that my friends in the gay community or, you know, transgender friends go through all the time. And I just wanted to write something just not really about being gay or trans or anything like that, because I did not bring that up in the movie at all for a reason. But it's mainly just to like show a person going through the kind of bullshit that people go through and how this particular person was affected.
And I think that's really interesting because, you know, in a very different kind of realm, a lot of legislation that's drafted around protections and things for sexual orientation or gender identity, the ones that are really visionary are the ones that say you won't be discriminated against based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or your perceived sexual orientation and gender identity. Because sometimes it doesn't matter what the actual identity even is. It's how you're perceived because of these different gender cues and things like that can lead to discrimination regardless of your actual identity.
Exactly. So I just wanted to, I don't know, show this little boy, like, who knows what, you know, he's a little kid. Who fucking knows? You know, the way people are treating him because of the way they're perceiving him.
And your son acted in that, right? He played the main role?
Yeah, my youngest son, Justin, played Benji.
How was that? Was he excited? Is he thinking about doing more acting?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it took a lot of bribing, and there was a lot of drama, you know, because he was a little kid and he wanted to go hang out with his friends. We filmed one scene, the scene with the blue doll. We filmed that like at 3:00 in the morning. So he was getting tired and stressed out, but he loves the movie now. Like, he watched it for the first time and he told me he didn't really know what it was going to be like, and he watched it and he said he didn't want it to be over. So that was a good sign. That's
cool. Before you did Dolly Diddley, you did some short films as well, right?
Yes.
Tell me about some of those shorts that you did.
Well, my very first short film's called Rip Tease, like Rest in Peace Tease, about zombie strippers. It's actually a feature. I have the script somewhere, and we made a teaser for it. But then I got a divorce and moved across the country, so that really never happened. Let's see. And then we've got Boyfriend, which is my first like actual short film. And it is about a woman, and her boyfriend is just way too nice and it annoys her and she can't stand it. So she poisons his dinner with birth control, and it transforms him into a mutant lady, and he chases her around the house and kills her. It was just for fun, and a lot of people, they do not get it. I'll see reviews, and it'll say, like, oh, it was a drag queen zombie, or, like, all this stuff. I'm like, it's not a drag queen. It's like, she poisoned him with hormones, or, you know, like, with birth control, and so it transformed him. It's interesting because it's like, so if you see something like that, you automatically are like, oh, that's a drag queen. Oh, this is gay. It's kind of funny or interesting to see how people view things like that.
Especially around gender, people like to try to fit things into nice, easy little boxes. So when something doesn't fit, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, because I read a lot of the reviews, and I don't know if I've ever seen a review where the person got it. I know it's kind of an obscure and weird movie, but I feel like we even had the girl be like, birth control, so that it would be more obvious, like when she found the birth control and then she puts it in his food. I just thought it would be funny, you know, oh, what would happen if a guy ate birth control? Obviously, he'd become a mutant lady. Yeah. Actually, the mutant lady is the poster girl for Wretched Productions. We have the mutant lady in cross tampons is the Wretched Productions logo. She's been with me my whole career.
What do you like better? Do you like shorts? Do you like features? Or are there just different benefits and challenges between the two?
Well, now at this point, I prefer feature films because it's more of what I'm trying to do with my career. You know, I'm trying to make feature films, get out there as a director. Sometimes I do make short films still for the sake of creating art and telling a story. I actually recently made a short film. It's still kind of a secret project, but it's for an anthology. And that was pretty fun because I hadn't made one in a while. And we just got to tell, a little part of a story.
And you're working on the sequel to Dolly Deadly, correct?
Oh, yeah. It's in post-production right now. It's a rock musical.
A rock musical? That should be exciting.
Oh, it is.
And it's got a couple fabulous
exciting
drag queens in it, so I'm always excited about that.
Yes, lots of drag queens. The star is Donna Slash from Baltimore. She's the singer of a band called Homo Superior.
Very cool. So what should we expect from the sequel? What are we going to see?
Okay, well, Benji from Dolly Deadly 1 kind of set it up at the end to do this, where Benji's an adult and goes by his alter ego, Dolly Deadly. It kind of has I don't want to tell the whole story. I'm trying to figure out how to explain.
Just a little teaser, yeah.
He has a nemesis named Slasherella. There's a whole dynamic between those two. And I kind of, toward the end, I decided that the theme of the movie is not appreciating what you have. Because there's a lot of times where you have really great friends. And I feel like this is kind of like or maybe it's always happened, but it happens a lot on social media where people are like, I don't have any friends. No one cares about me. And it's like, you have so many friends. Okay. You do have friends. Or they're saying that, and then 100 people will comment on their Facebook comment on their posts. Like, I'm here for you. Talk to me. Like, what's going on? And they're still like, nobody cares. And it's like, okay, well, obviously someone cares. You have all these people commenting. Or how people ditch their friends for a guy or a girl. Maybe their friend doesn't like the person or, something, and they'll just completely ditch their friends who care about them, and then they'll come crawling back once the relationship fails. So there's some themes in that area I thought was fun.
That's cool. Another thing that's pretty exciting is you are now working with Troma.
Yes, Troma is co-producing Kill Dolly Kill, which is Dolly Deadly 2.
How is it working with Troma?
Well, it's good. It's pretty fun. Before Troma picked up Kill Dolly Kill, they wanted some script changes. I had 2 brainstorming sessions with Lloyd Kaufman about it, and it was great because he is so creative, and it was so nice just having, a talk with somebody who understands my ideas. I don't know, it was just great. I could say anything, and he totally got it, and he would say something, and I would get it. It was a special moment, I think.
Well, and it leaves the door open for a Dolly Deadly Toxic Avenger crossover. So we can all hope for that.
Think of that. Yeah, well, there is going to be a Dolly Deadly 3. I don't know when, but it's going to be in outer space, of course.
Of course.
Right? Every franchise has to go to outer space. We do plan to do that sometime. I'm not positive when.
Is there anything specific about gender that you wanted to kind of explore through Dolly Deadly and Dolly Deadly 2?
Well, see, Dolly Deadly 1, I kind of did by myself. Dolly Deadly 2 is more of a collaboration. So, of course I'm a part of it, but, a mix of what a lot of other people are imagining as well. But the first one is a lot about gender roles in society and what people think, a boy should act like, or a man should act like, or a woman should act like. So there's a lot of that when it comes to gender.
Another thing that I was kind of creeping on your social media a little bit, but the Medusa Underground Film Festival, you are the director of that as well. What kind of films are you looking for to show for that film festival?
The Medusa Underground Film Festival is an underground film festival for short films created by women or female identifying filmmakers. So underground films is the weird, unusual, not quite horror, or, you just don't know what to classify it as. Oh man, I have seen so many incredible films watching through the entries. And we have entries from women all over the world, and from countries I didn't even know women had the freedom, to create movies, or, the resources to create movies from these countries. So it's been very inspiring. I'm so excited for this because, I guess coming back to social media, is on Facebook or Instagram, whatever, you meet so many cool people that you just wish that you could hang out with. But, they're so far away. They're all scattered around. So this is an opportunity for everyone to come and hang out in one place, to come and meet each other, watch each other's movies together, get inspired, and network.
Yeah. When is that event happening?
It's set to be January 12th through the 13th.
And that's in Las Vegas?
Yeah, in Las Vegas.
How many films are you planning to show during that festival?
We're trying to lock down the venue and negotiate prices. So we're hoping to get 2 days. If we could get 2 days, we're thinking like around 30 short films. We weren't going to do feature films because there's not a lot of room, but if we can get 2 days, I would like to show at least 3 feature films. There's so many that just need to be seen, and so I need to try to show them because I don't know. I'm sure you know, you're big in the film community. There's just mind-blowing movies that are just so amazing. Everyone has to see them.
Yeah, I always run across these kind of fun independent films, and I'm just like, somebody needs to watch these. And I'm kind of surprised in North Dakota that we have a little community of people. They kind of show up to my events because they never know what they're going to see. And they always have a good time. They always enjoy it and love it.
Good. That's awesome.
Also, I want to talk a little bit about More Blood, the documentary that you put out, which is really kind of a celebration of fandom, which I thought was really kind of cool. Tell me a little bit more about how that documentary came about and what inspired it.
Well, I was on Valentine's Day, I believe 2 years ago. I was at a theater in Kansas City, and I was watching Necromantic with like a packed theater of people. People were just laughing and so into it in the most disgusting part. And I was even like, I wasn't fazed at all. And there was a part, have you seen Necromantic?
I haven't, no.
Oh, well, there's this part where a couple has a threesome with a corpse. And I just knew. I was like, man, you know what? That girl is going to leave her boyfriend for that corpse. It's just such a good listener. He's just better. and then I was like, why am I thinking like that? And she did. She actually does run off with the corpse. I was like, good, see? And I wasn't even fazed. I was like, see, that's a better boyfriend. And it didn't faze me at all. Why am I watching this? I have no problem with it. Why are we going to laugh when we see someone's head explode in a movie or their guts fall out or blood everywhere, So I just thought it would be fun where it's like not really any opinions, but just people talking about their thoughts on it. Talking about why do I enjoy it? What does it do for me? What do I think it does for other people? It's kind of interesting because a lot of people cannot wrap their brain around the fact that it's not just about horror. People will tell someone else about the movie. They'll tell them, oh, it's a movie on why people like horror films. And it's like, no, it's not about that at all. It's actually why do we enjoy watching death and gore for entertainment?
Yeah. I mean, people are fascinated that people want to watch horror and gore and all this different stuff. But then they have no trouble watching the news, which North Dakota, our news is pretty tame because nothing ever happens here. But every once in a while I go to Arizona, and Arizona is like the worst. Like, they are the stereotype of the awful big city news because you turn it on and it's just like, congratulations, you didn't die before this newscast. Now we're going to talk about 16 things that'll probably kill you before the newscast is over. Terror and destruction and everything just like at you. And so people don't understand why you would want to watch, sort of fake horror and terror, but they have no trouble watching this on the news.
And people they only think horror. Death and gore, but it's like, no, it's everything.
And I'm trying to remember where I read this. There was an article that I read that was talking about people's reaction to 9/11 and the sort of constant coverage. And they said that our popular culture is drenched in death. And, they said people were so shocked that somebody would fly a plane into a building. And they said, but if you go to the movie theater, you see people flying planes into buildings and murdering people and doing all these things, that's our entertainment, that all this sort of thing, it becomes almost this culmination of this national fantasy of constant terror and bloodshed. And what does that mean for us as people? It was really fascinating.
I want to read that. So I realized there is just so much to talk about with this subject. Like, you can't really cover it all in one movie or else it starts getting too jumbled. So we are actually right now working on making a docuseries based on the idea, probably about 10 episodes. I don't want to say what, the subject of each episode is, but it's pretty interesting. It's stuff that a lot of people don't really think about.
One of the things that I felt like when I was watching More Blood, that it really celebrated kind of interesting sort of fandom in a way that gets away from that more traditional fanboy genre worship kind of thing. So it was a different way of approaching fandom. So what are some of your favorite horror movies? Like, what are some things that really kind of inspire you? Things that you think are really interesting, kind of perspectives?
Okay. I don't know. People ask me this all the time. And sometimes my brain is so full of bullshit that I've seen I watch TV a lot. Like I'm not even going to sugarcoat that. All I ever want to do is watch TV. So I have bits and pieces of lots of things in my mind. This isn't really a horror, but Beetlejuice, man, this is one of my favorite movies. I know that a lot of people have an issue with Tim Burton. That movie is like perfect. Michael Keaton, I just don't know. He's just perfect. He's perfect as Beetlejuice. It's such a cool world that they created. And that's something that I love, is that they create a universe. That's something that's very inspiring to me. That's what I like to do, is like create a certain type of world where certain things exist just normally. I don't know. That's one of my favorites. Ooh, horror. When I was a kid, I used to rent demonic toys all the time. I think that's one of them. I'd rent it all the time. When I'd spend the night at a friend's house, I'd bring it over. I used to like the movie It a lot. And I was waiting for the movie to come out, and I was really excited for it, but then I haven't watched it because people keep making fun of me, but it's just too sad. I can't watch those little kids being so heartbroken and scared.
It's good. I liked it. I was never I liked the original miniseries, but I think that Stephen King in general, I think, does better when he can be kind of an R-rated feature rather than a miniseries, because I think you have to leave so much out. I liked it, but it did feel a little bit like they clearly had the budget for some special effects and they kind of leaned on that a little bit. But I liked it. I thought it was good. They did some things to Beverly's character that I didn't love. They kind of made her a little weaker than she is in the book or in the original miniseries.
Oh, really? Yeah. People keep telling me I should watch it, but I was just thinking, last time I watched the movie, the 2 VHS TV miniseries, man, I was just bawling. It's like, do not go to that clown. Why are you saying I shouldn't be talking to strangers, but you still go over there? He's just the sweetest little boy, the little brother.
Yeah.
And he gets killed, and then his brother, Jonathan Brandis, is in the room, and he's just crying. His parents are like, get out of there. Why are you in his room? And he's just crying and asking his friends for help. And I'm like, oh, no, this baby is so sad. And I was like, okay, I can't go watch that other movie. And I was watching Stranger Things. I loved the first season of Stranger Things. It blew me away. Then I started watching the second season. It was just so fucking sad. I had to turn it off. It
was definitely a different feel. I did like it, and I think as you go through, if you do go back to it, it definitely picks up, but there's a lot of sad moments in season 2.
It was sad. He was like feeling possessed again. He was trying to explain to his mom how he feels, and he's just crying so bad. I was like, oh man, I gotta turn it off. It's breaking my heart. Have you seen Bad Channels?
No, I haven't.
It's not great. There's like one scene that's so good though. It's a musical. I think it's a Full Moon movie from Full Moon, but there's like musical numbers in it. And man, there's this one musical number in the hospital. You guys see, I'm going to send it to you. It's like when I saw it, when it came on, I just jumped off the couch because I was like, what? This is so good. But I think that was like the only good part of the movie. Let's see, I'm really trying to figure this out for you. Oh, I love Freddy Krueger. I like Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Number 3, I think, is my favorite.
I love number 3. There was something very different about that than the other ones, because I think that there's so many slasher movies where the kids just kind of all are off wandering on their own and they kind of get taken out one by one. And that was one of the first horror movies that I remember seeing as a kid, and seeing them work together and seeing them kind of band together was a very different kind of message than I think a lot of the other horror movies that I watched, the couple that I watched before and maybe the ones after.
Do you like Freddy versus Jason? Oh, it's so good. A lot of people told me they don't like it, but I just love it. It's so funny. And then they're fighting and they're both like, fuck, just die.
I do enjoy that one. I was super excited for that to come out because one of my big guilty pleasures is Destiny's Child. And Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child is in that movie.
I love that because she's talking shit to Jason. She's like, oh, what do you have to have a knife? Or like she's saying all these things and then he just kills her.
Yeah. Oh.
I don't know. It's so good, but a lot of people said they don't really like it. I thought it was hilarious. Great soundtrack. It's good.
A movie like that, I think, just has to be for fun. Like, it just has to be a kind of celebration of the over-the-topness of both of those franchises to work.
Yeah.
At that point, Jason had already gone to space. So, I mean, how do you make a small Freddy versus Jason movie?
Right. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
One of my guilty pleasures, the Friday the 13th movies are the ones that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
And I like all of the big three, Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. But Friday the 13th is the one that's kind of my favorite out of those.
Honestly, I haven't really ever got into that.
I hadn't seen quite a few of them. There was a couple that were still kind of waiting around, and I bought the box set, and I kind of watched through it. And Jason Takes Manhattan, that one is very strange, but it's... Oh, yeah, it's number 8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people didn't like it because it gets away from the sort of mythology. Because, of course, Jason leaves Crystal Lake and goes to Manhattan, like you do. I guess
like the Muppets.
Yeah, like the Muppets. The Muppets went there. I mean, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. So he went to Manhattan. But there was something about it that it's kind of campy and fun, but I think it gets away from that core mythology. So I think that's why people kind of have trouble with it.
Oh, you know what? I just watched Leprechaun 4 the other day, and it was so good. Leprechaun in Space. Oh my god, I would just watch it by myself. It's not like I'm going to tell everyone, hey, have you seen Leprechaun 4? Did it blow your mind? It was good. It was so good. So I love Leprechaun movies, actually. And I dream of being able to make the next Leprechaun. Hire me. If someone's listening, hire me to make a Leprechaun movie. And I want to direct a Purge movie.
Yeah, that would be very cool.
Yeah, I have ideas. I have ideas about getting real fucking petty because I think that's what would happen in real life.
You said that you like to watch a lot of TV. So this is a kind of get to know you question that I like to ask people sometimes. So if you're flipping through the channels, just kind of channel surfing, what's the movie or movies that if you run across it, it doesn't necessarily have to be your favorite, but if you see it, you're done. You know you have to watch it. You're just like, I have to finish this.
Oh, any of the Bring It On movies. I will watch it. One time I was at a hotel with someone and it came on TV and they're like, okay, let's go. Like we were in Reno and we were going to go do some stuff. And I'm like, oh, hold on. They turned it off and I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, I thought you were just kidding. Let's bring it on. I'm like, I'm not fucking kidding when it comes to this movie, okay? Like,
we don't kid about cheerleading.
And, and Hocus Pocus.
Yes, that's one of mine.
It comes on around Halloween, and it will be on like 5 times a day, and I'll watch it every time.
I love that one. Dirty Dancing is a big one for me. They used to show that a lot. I don't have cable anymore because it was not healthy. All I did was sit there and watch Bravo. And so I was like, I'm gonna have my Netflix and my Amazon streaming, that sort of stuff, but I have to get rid of cable. But Dirty Dancing used to get me. And one that they used to show fairly often back when I was in college is The American President. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's got Michael Douglas and Annette Bening. And I feel like right now with the current administration, I feel like they should be playing The American President 24 hours a day on like 16 different channels so that people just run across it all the time because it's so good.
Yeah, that sounds, I gotta check it out.
The idea is this guy gets elected president when he's a recent widower. So his wife has just died. And people are saying that he only really won the election because people felt sorry for him and nobody could go on it like an attack campaign. And they're gearing up for the next election and he meets Annette Bening and they start dating. And so then it's all about what's it like to date the president. And there's this, what's his name? Richard Dreyfuss plays like this evil Republican who, now that the president has a girlfriend, he's like, I can go on the attack. And it's so good. And then there at the end, Michael Douglas gives this like rallying speech where he just goes after Richard Dreyfuss, and it's just like, that should play every single day in this country right now.
That's funny. Yeah, I've never even heard of that movie.
Oh, it's so good. It's like 1995, I think.
I love 90s movies.
Yeah, it was really good. And it was just kind of, I mean, I could watch Annette Bening do anything. I love her so much. And it's just a cute movie. Doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's got great people. Michael J. Fox is in there and so good.
Do you like Rob Zombie movies? I keep forgetting to ask that. I like House of a Thousand Corpses a lot.
I haven't watched those. I've watched his Halloween remakes, but I met Bill Moseley at one of the horror conventions. And he did the photo op with Otis Driftwood, I think is the character's name, in his like ritual outfit. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to have to go back and watch these.
It's pretty good. I'm not a big fan of the other ones, not because of how it's done. It's just that it's hard for me to watch movies like where people are just really fucked up, like the Devil's Rejects. And they were in the hotel room just torturing somebody. I was like, I can't watch it. It's not like anything about how he makes his movies, but I just couldn't watch it. But I did like House of a Thousand Corpses, even though it is like more like there's a lot of torture going on. I love the aesthetic.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about that. I don't tend to watch the more kind of torture-y ones. Like I like a good 80s suggestive kind of horror movie. Where a lot more is kind of suggested than is shown. But I keep hearing about how good those movies are, so I think I'm going to have to go back and watch them.
Yeah, I respect his work. I do like it. I haven't really watched the Halloween movies, but just it's just not my thing anyway. But because I really like science fiction and more like cult film also. Man, I love Mad Max. I love The Running Man. I love Total Recall.
I haven't watched the older Mad Max, but I love that new Fury Road that came out a couple years ago. That was really good.
I liked it. I get so excited about everything. When I saw the trailer for that, I like jumped out. I was on like at the computer and I just jumped up onto my chair and I was like screaming about it. And then I watched it and it was very visually amazing, but it was just like a one long chase scene. And I personally would have liked to know more about the town or, you know, more about what's going on with this mother's milk business. Oh man. But then I just went home and watched Thunderdome with Tina Turner. So good. And Mel Gibson is my guilty pleasure. I just told the whole world that, but man, when he is Mad Max, I don't know.
He's a little crazy, but sometimes he can deliver.
Yeah, I try not to pay attention to any of that. I just like, oh no, it's Mad Max though. I just like Max. Don't tell me anything about Mel Gibson. I don't want to know. Well, I already do know, but people try to be like, well, you know. I'm like, no, don't do it.
There's a great book by Roxane Gay. She wrote a book called Bad Feminist, and it's a collection of essays, and she writes about liking kind of problematic popular culture, that sometimes you like these things, and then something will happen, and that person is kind of like, oh, I wish I didn't know that about you. And she kind of delves into that idea of what does it mean to like some of these things that are connected to people that maybe don't always have the best ideas that they're putting forth, or even the product itself maybe has some undertones that aren't very good, but you still just like it. There's something about it that just entertains you.
I have those too. One of my favorite bands is The Dwarves. It's a punk band, and they are sleazy, and they have girls dancing up on the stage, getting naked and all stuff, and I can't stop. I love it, but otherwise I'd be like, what the fuck? Like I'm like get super like triggered about things like that, but I don't know. Since high school, they've been a favorite of mine.
I don't get what it is either, because that, even for me, like Destiny's Child, there's something about that that's so garbage. Like, it's just so terrible and garbage, but I love it. Like, I have my little secret Destiny's Child playlist, and I just I put on Bootylicious when I'm cleaning the bathroom. I love it. Any other kind of interesting projects that you're working on, or anything you want us to know about?
Well, I don't know. I've been kind of taking a little breather. I am working on getting that docuseries together. That secret short film I was telling you about, we were actually thinking that we wanted to do a feature film based on a part of that short film. Like, not on the story, but on a part of it. So I've been kind of working on that as well, getting a script together. And I'm going to say that's about it, but I know when we are done here, I'll think of all kinds of things.
Oh, and I have to say, you met my friend Brooklyn.
Yes,
Brooklyn and Jerry and Justin came over, and they were extras in Dolly Deadly 2. Yeah,
actually, they weren't even extras. They had kind of more of like I guess they were featured extras. They had dialogue and stuff.
Oh, very cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had a lot of fun. They told me that was a good time.
That was something I was trying to do with Kill Dolly Kill. Was we got to do it a lot. Is where it's again like what I mentioned about the film festival is you meet all of these amazing people that you wish you could hang out with on social media, online. And so I brought together so many of these people in the Las Vegas shoot, and at the Indiana shoot. And so like a lot of people, we all got to like meet each other and work together and create art together. It was amazing.
I'm excited to see it. Do you know when that is approximately going to come out? I know that it'll all have to do with production and stuff, but
yeah, I really don't know. We're trying to get a rough cut edit finished at the end of September. Then I have to go through and nitpick and make it all weird and stylized. And then we have sound design and the score and all of that stuff. So it takes a while.
When it's available, we definitely would love to show that for another Miss J's Friday Night Frights.
Oh, yes, definitely. I actually have in my contract with Trauma, because they have Dolly Deadly now also. So in the contract, because they don't let people screen their movies for free, but I have specifically in the contract that anyone that I approve of, like if I say yes, they can show it for free, then they can.
Yeah.
So and I said like at any like of the Pride events or like anything, if it's a close friend of mine and they ask me and I want them to be able to show it, then they can.
Yeah, that's cool because Dolly Deadly was really popular. We did it actually for Pride last year.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I wish I could have been there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We did, it was kind of a doll-themed Pride because we did your film Dolly Deadly and then Tommy Faircloth, who's a gay director from North Carolina or South Carolina, I can't remember, but he has a film called Dollface.
Yeah, oh yeah, I remember that.
So we did the kind of two doll films, and they're very different, but they work together really well.
Oh, that's cool.
Very cool. Well, thanks very much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for talking with me. That was fun.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with filmmaker Heidi Moore, and definitely be on the lookout. I'm sure once Kill Dolly Kill is available for release, you'll see it pop up at a Miss J's Friday Night Frights. Now, before I end this episode, I spoke a little bit in the commentary about supporting independent filmmakers and content creators, and so I wanted to tell you just a little bit more about a few of the companies that I support, and how you can find out more about them and how to get involved. First up, of course, is Heidi Moore's own Wretched Productions. You can search for Wretched Productions on Facebook and find their fan page. And you can also find them at wretchedproductions.com, where they have links to articles and other press reviews of some of their films. You can find information about current fundraisers, and they also have a shop where you can pick up films and other items. Dolly Deadly and Kill Dolly Kill also both have their own independent Facebook pages. The second company that I want to talk about is Dirt Candy Productions. Dirt Candy Productions is the brainchild of photographer and filmmaker Brooklyn Ewing, who just happens to have been the guest on Season 1, Episode 2 of Janessa After Dark, and is responsible for the films She Was So Pretty and She Was So Pretty, Be Good for Goodness Sake. Both of those films have their own Facebook pages, as does their upcoming project Tales from the Creep. Facebook is usually the easiest place to track down Brooklyn and her crew, but you can also check out their website, shewasSoPretty.com. Brooklyn is also pretty active on Instagram, and that can be a fun place to follow her, especially if you're interested in keeping up with the adventures of her chihuahua, Mr. Donut. And one more independent film company that I think is really worth supporting is Tommy Faircloth's Horse Creek Productions. Tommy is an out gay man who has been directing films since the 90s. He's produced films such as Crinoline Head, Dollface, Generation Axe, and Family Possessions. And his upcoming film, A Nun's Curse, recently ran a very successful Indiegogo campaign that more than doubled their initial $5,000 goal and will be featuring veteran scream queen Felissa Rose. You can find Horse Creek Productions as well as individual fan pages for each of their films on Facebook, and you can also visit their website at horsecreekprods.com. On their website, you can watch trailers, get news about development and upcoming films, and also have a link to their store where you can purchase movies and other items. And don't be surprised if Tommy Faircloth pops up on Janessa After Dark sometime during Season 2. Now, the last company that I want to mention isn't a company that's producing films, but they produce wonderful artwork related to some of the best genre films out there, and it's owned by two of the most wonderful, amazing, kick-ass people that I know. And that, of course, is Atomic Cotton. You may be familiar with Erica Kaufman from Atomic Cotton after I interviewed her for season 1, episode 4. But she and her husband, Zach, have a t-shirt printing business called Easy Tees. And then Atomic Cotton is where they produce a lot of Erica's artwork and also collaborate with other artists to create t-shirts and stickers, all related to fantastic pop culture properties. Pretty much every day of the week, I'm a walking billboard for Atomic Cotton. I absolutely love what they do, and I think you will too. You can find Erica Kaufman on Facebook and on Instagram, where you can get lots of updates about not only the business, but also their 4 pets. And you can also find Atomic Cotton, the business, on Facebook or at their website, atomiccotton.com. These are just 4 of the companies that I like to promote, I like to support when I can. And remember, if there's a company that you really enjoy the content that they make, think about supporting them financially. And even if you can't afford that, remember that it doesn't cost anything to give a like, to share a page, to recommend them to your friends. You never know what kind of connection is going to be helpful to those businesses. And when you're an independent content creator, those connections are so important. So while we're on that subject, don't forget to go back to SoundCloud or iTunes or wherever you found this podcast. Leave us a review, leave us a like, leave us a comment. We love to see all of those things coming in. They don't cost anything, and we absolutely love and appreciate all of the support. If you want to keep up with me and what I'm up to, you can always track me down on Facebook. If you search for Janessa J. Champagne, you'll probably find me. My name is kind of long and complicated because of those damn Facebook police. Or you can track me down on Instagram at Janessa J. Official. And of course, one of the best ways to keep up with what I'm doing and the projects that I'm working on is at my website, The World of Champagne, at janessajay.com. That's JANESSAJAYE.com. My website includes all of my blog articles, theater reviews, show announcements, as well as the ever popular makeup forum where I review and try products, and a lot more. And as always, thank you to everybody who has provided so much support and love over the years. I absolutely am blown away that we are on season 2 of Janessa After Dark, and I have some amazing things planned for you this season, so stay tuned. This episode of Janessa After Dark includes royalty-free music from bensound.com. This episode includes the tracks Actionable, which serves as our podcast intro, the song Going Higher, which played on the bumpers of Heidi Moore's interview, and the song Sexy, which you're listening to now. For these great royalty-free tracks and more, visit bensound, that's BEN sound.com. Janessa After Dark is written and directed by Chris M. Stoner and is a Champagne Dreams production.